You're doing affirmations wrong, and it's literally pushing money away from you. Every time you say, "I am rich," while your bank account screams otherwise, you're creating a wall between you and wealth that gets thicker with every repetition. Subscribe to Attraction Magnet, hit that like button, and drop a comment, because what I'm about to show you goes against everything the manifestation gurus have been teaching you. And it's going to flip your entire understanding of how reality actually works. Right now, thousands of people are sitting in their bedrooms repeating, "I am wealthy, I am abundant, I am a millionaire," and they're wondering why their bank account hasn't moved an inch. Some have been doing this for years. Every single day, they wake up, look in the mirror, and lie to themselves with conviction. And here's the brutal part. The more they affirm, the worse it gets. Because every time you say, "I am rich," while you're actually broke, your subconscious mind goes, "Wait a minute, that's not true," and it rejects the entire suggestion. You're not reprogramming anything. You're actually reinforcing the poverty. In the next few minutes, you'll discover exactly what Neville Goddard taught about this fatal mistake and how to actually impress your subconscious mind so that wealth flows to you naturally, without resistance, without the mental gymnastics. I met a guy named Marcus 3 years ago. He was obsessed with Neville Goddard, had read every lecture, practiced SATs every night, did his affirmations religiously. "I am wealthy. I am financially free. Money flows to me effortlessly." He said these things hundreds of times a day. After 2 years of this, he was more broke than when he started. He came to me frustrated, angry, feeling like manifestation was a scam. We sat down and I asked him one simple question. "When you say, 'I am wealthy,' what do you actually feel?" He paused. He looked at me and said honestly, "I feel like I'm lying." And that's when everything clicked. What I discovered working with Marcus and dozens of others like him is going to shock you. And it's exactly what Neville tried to tell us, but everyone missed. After analyzing over 50 of Neville's original lectures and working directly with people struggling to manifest money, I can tell you with certainty that the affirmation industry has completely distorted what Neville actually taught. What you're about to learn isn't speculation. It's exactly what Neville meant when he said, "I am is God," and why your current approach is keeping you trapped. Here's what nobody tells you about present tense affirmations. When you say, "I am rich," while you're actually poor, you create what Neville called a double-mindedness. Your conscious mind is saying one thing, and your subconscious mind, which actually runs your life, is saying something completely different. And here's the problem. Your subconscious always wins. It doesn't matter how many times you repeat the affirmation. If your subconscious doesn't accept it as true, it won't manifest. It can't manifest. Think about it. Every time you look at your empty bank account after saying, "I am wealthy," what happens? Your subconscious gets confirmation that you were lying. And the more you affirm against your current reality, the more you're actually reinforcing the poverty consciousness. You're not building a bridge to wealth. You're building a wall. Dr. Bruce Lipton's research on the subconscious mind revealed something critical. The subconscious operates about 1 million times faster than the conscious mind and controls 95% of our behavior. When there's a conflict between what you consciously want and what your subconscious believes, the subconscious wins every single time. This is why positive affirmations fail for most people. They're trying to override deeply programmed beliefs with surface-level repetition. Let me give you a real example. Sarah was a yoga instructor making barely enough to pay rent. She started doing wealth affirmations. "I am financially abundant. Money comes to me easily." She did this for 6 months straight. Nothing changed. Actually, it got worse. She lost 2 of her regular classes. When we dug deeper, we discovered that every time she said the affirmation, she would immediately think about her bills, her debt, her struggle. The affirmation wasn't creating wealth consciousness, it was triggering poverty consciousness. The moment she stopped the affirmations and switched to Neville's actual method, everything changed. Within 3 months, she got offered a position at a luxury wellness resort, making 3 times her previous income. The method she used had nothing to do with present-tense affirmations. And here's the part that's going to change everything for you. Neville never taught present-tense affirmations. Read that again. Neville Goddard, the man everyone quotes about I am, never told you to walk around saying, I am rich, when you're broke. What he actually taught was something completely different, something that bypasses the resistance, something that works with your subconscious instead of against it. But before I show you what he really meant, you need to understand why the affirmation gurus got it so wrong. If affirmations don't work, then what the hell was Neville actually teaching? When Neville said, I am is God, everyone took that literally and started creating affirmations beginning with I am. But they completely missed what he was actually pointing to. Neville wasn't giving you a magic phrase to repeat. He was explaining the fundamental nature of consciousness and how reality is created. I am isn't a statement. It's a state of being. When Neville talked about I am, he was referring to your consciousness, your awareness, your sense of self. He was saying that consciousness is the only reality and that whatever you are conscious of being, you become. Not what you say, what you are conscious of being. This is the distinction that changes everything. In his 1948 lecture titled Consciousness is the Only Reality, Neville explained that you must feel yourself into the state of the wish fulfilled. He didn't say affirm yourself into it. He said feel yourself into it. There's a massive difference. When you affirm I am rich, you're using words. When you feel yourself as rich, you're shifting your entire state of consciousness. One is mental, the other is experiential. One engages your conscious mind, the other impresses your subconscious. Here's a concrete example of how this works. John was a construction worker who wanted financial freedom. Instead of saying, I am wealthy, he would close his eyes every night and imagine himself in the specific feeling of having received a massive promotion with a huge raise. He wouldn't visualize it. He wouldn't affirm it. He would simply rest in the feeling of relief, of security, of freedom. He would feel the texture of expensive sheets in his new home. He would feel the weight of car keys to a vehicle he'd always wanted. He wasn't pretending. He was actually occupying the state. Within 4 months, his company merged with a larger firm, and he was offered a management position with double his previous salary, plus benefits he never imagined. He didn't manifest from affirmations. He manifested from occupying the state. And this is where it gets really powerful. When you occupy a state, you don't need to convince yourself of anything. You're not trying to believe. You're not fighting resistance. You're simply there. It's the difference between saying, I'm in New York while you're in California, versus actually being in New York. One requires belief. The other requires nothing, because it's your reality. Neville's entire teaching was about entering the state of the wish fulfilled and remaining there until it hardens into fact. But here's the question everyone gets stuck on. If you can't affirm your way into wealth, how do you actually enter and stay in the state of being wealthy? What's the mechanism? Neville wrote an entire book called Feeling is the Secret, yet most people completely ignore it in favor of affirmations. Here's what he actually said. Feeling is the one and only medium through which ideas are conveyed to the subconscious. Not words, not affirmations, not visualizations, feeling. This is the key that unlocks everything. When you say, I am rich but feel poor, which one is impressing your subconscious? The feeling. Always the feeling. Your subconscious mind doesn't understand English or any other language. It understands feelings, emotions, states. So when you're repeating affirmations with zero feeling behind them, you're basically talking to a wall. Nothing's getting through. Neuroscientist Dr. Joe Dispenza has studied this extensively. His research shows that when you combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion, you create a new electromagnetic signature that literally changes your biology and broadcasts a different frequency into the quantum field. But here's what's fascinating. He found that when people try to manifest from a state of lack, when they're doing affirmations while feeling desperate or doubtful, they're actually reinforcing the very state they're trying to escape. The elevated emotion has to match the reality you want, not the reality you have. Let me show you exactly how this works with a real case. Michelle was drowning in debt, almost $60,000. She tried affirmations for a year. I am debt-free. I am financially stable. Money comes easily to me. Her debt actually increased. When she learned about Neville's feeling method, she completely changed her approach. Instead of affirming, she would spend 10 minutes every night before sleep simply resting in the feeling of total financial freedom. She wouldn't think about the debt. She wouldn't visualize paying it off. She would just feel the peace, the relief, the security of being completely free. She imagined checking her bank account and feeling satisfied. She imagined making purchases without anxiety. Pure feeling. Within 8 months, she received an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative she barely knew. It wasn't exactly $60,000. It was $75,000. She paid off everything and had money left over. The feeling created the reality. And here's what makes this so powerful and why it's so much better than affirmations. When you generate the feeling first, the thoughts and words automatically align. You don't have to force yourself to believe anything. The feeling is the belief. It's self-evident. But most people have this backwards. They try to think their way into feeling. They affirm hoping it will eventually produce the feeling. But Neville taught the opposite. Go directly to the feeling and let everything else follow. Stay with me because I'm about to show you the exact technique Neville used and why timing is everything. If feeling is the secret, when is the optimal time to impress these feelings into your subconscious? SATS stands for state akin to sleep. This was Neville's primary technique, and it's wildly misunderstood. People think SATS is just visualizing before bed. It's not. SATS is about entering a very specific brainwave state where your conscious mind releases control and your subconscious becomes highly receptive to impressions. This happens naturally twice a day, right before you fall asleep at night and right when you wake up in the morning. During these windows, you're in what neuroscience calls the theta brainwave state. This is the state where hypnosis works, where deep meditation happens, where your subconscious mind is wide open. If you try to impress your subconscious with affirmations during your fully alert beta state, you're fighting against your conscious mind's filters and beliefs. But if you do it during theta, there's no resistance. The suggestions go directly in. The Journal of Neuroscience published a study showing that the theta state is when the brain is most neuroplastic, meaning it's most capable of forming new neural pathways. This is when beliefs can actually be changed at the root level. During theta, your critical factor, the part of your mind that says that's not true when you affirm something that contradicts your current reality, is essentially offline. This is why Neville was so insistent about practicing his technique at night before sleep. It's not mystical, it's neuroscience. Here's where everyone messes it up, though. David tried SATS for months with zero results. He would lie down, visualize his desired outcome, repeat some affirmations, and fall asleep. Nothing happened. When we analyzed what he was actually doing, the problem became obvious. He was visualizing like he was watching a movie of his future self. He was seeing himself as wealthy from a distance. This doesn't work because you're still identified as the observer, the person who doesn't have it yet. Neville specifically said, "You must see from the wish fulfilled, not see yourself in the wish fulfilled." There's a crucial difference. When David switched to actually experiencing the scene from a first-person perspective, when he felt the chair he was sitting in as a wealthy man, when he heard the sounds around him in his new reality, when he engaged all his senses from inside the experience, everything shifted. Within 2 months, he was offered a partnership in a business opportunity he never saw coming. The technique finally worked because he finally did it correctly. And here's the most important part about Satis that nobody talks about. You only need about 60 to 90 seconds of this. That's it. You don't need hours of visualization. You just need to hold the feeling of the wish fulfilled in that theta state for about a minute, and then let yourself drift into sleep from that feeling. Neville said, the transition from the feeling to sleep is where the magic happens. That's when the impression is sealed in your subconscious. But if you're doing present tense affirmations during this time, you're wasting the most powerful manifestation window you have. You're feeding your subconscious words when it needs feelings. So if SATS is the technique and feeling is the mechanism, why do some people stay broke even when they think they're doing everything right? What's the invisible block that keeps wealth away? This is where 99% of people completely sabotage themselves. They think they're manifesting wealth, but they're actually manifesting the desire for wealth. There's a massive difference. When you affirm, "I want to be rich," or even "I am becoming rich," you're affirming the state of lack. You're telling your subconscious, "I don't have it yet." And guess what your subconscious does? It creates more situations where you don't have it yet. Because your subconscious is always working to prove your dominant state correct. If your dominant state is wanting, you'll perpetually be in a state of wanting, never having. This is the trap. Neville's concept of living in the end means you mentally move to the place where your desire is already fulfilled. You don't live in the journey toward it. You don't live in the process of getting it. You live in the end result, right now, today, as if it's already done. Let me give you a perfect example. Rachel wanted to manifest $100,000. She started with affirmations. "I am manifesting $100,000. After 3 months, nothing. Then she learned about living in the end. She stopped affirming and asking for the money. Instead, she spent 5 minutes every night simply feeling the way she would feel if she already had that $100,000 safely in her account. She felt the security, the options, the freedom. She didn't think about how it would come. She didn't obsess over when. She just rested in the feeling of already having it. She would imagine opening her banking app and seeing that balance. Not wishing for it, not hoping for it, just experiencing it as real. Within 6 weeks, her uncle called her out of the blue. He was selling a property and offered her a partnership deal that netted her $98,000. She wasn't waiting for money. She was already wealthy in consciousness. So it manifested. When you're living in the end, you're not chasing. You're not desperate. You're not affirming because there's nothing to affirm. You already have it. And that state of consciousness attracts the physical equivalent, like a magnet. And this is the critical distinction. Affirmations keep you in the state of wanting because they're statements made from the position of not having. Living in the end is the assumption that it's already done. One is future-focused. The other is present-focused. One creates distance. The other collapses time. Neville said, "Assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled and continue in that assumption. Not hope for it. Not affirm toward it. Assume it's done and stay there. But here's what confuses everyone. How do you stay in that assumption when your bank account, your bills, your entire 3D reality is screaming the opposite? How do you ignore what's right in front of your face? This is Neville's most radical teaching, and the one that separates the masters from everyone else. You have to completely ignore your current circumstances. Not deny them. Ignore them. There's a difference. Denying reality means pretending it doesn't exist and living in delusion. Ignoring reality means acknowledging what's there, but refusing to give it power in your consciousness. Neville taught that your 3D reality, everything you can see and touch, is nothing more than a shadow of your past consciousness. It's old news. It's the result of who you were being weeks or months ago. So when you react to it, when you let it define you, when you use it as evidence that manifestation doesn't work, you're literally responding to outdated information and recreating the same circumstances over and over. Quantum physics actually supports this. The double-slit experiment proved that observation affects reality at a quantum level. The act of observing collapses the wave function into a particle. Translated into manifestation terms, when you observe your current lack, when you focus on it, measure it, worry about it, you're collapsing the quantum field into more lack. But when you withdraw your attention from the current lack and place it on the desired state, you're collapsing the wave function into wealth. Here's how this played out in real life. Thomas was $50,000 in debt. Every day he would check his bank account, look at his bills, stress about his situation. He tried affirmations. They made it worse because every time he said, "I am financially free," his immediate next thought was, "But look at all this debt." Then he learned Neville's method. He made a radical decision. He stopped checking his bank balance obsessively. He stopped talking about his debt. He stopped giving the 3D reality any emotional energy. Instead, he spent 10 minutes every morning and night simply assuming he was debt-free. He would feel it. He would act from it. He would make decisions from that state. When bills came, he would acknowledge them calmly, but wouldn't let them shift his inner state. He stayed anchored in the end. In less than 5 months, he received a job offer in another city, with a signing bonus large enough to clear his debt, and a salary that was double what he was making. The 3D circumstances didn't improve gradually. They transformed suddenly, as Neville always said they would, because Thomas stopped feeding the old reality with his attention and consciousness. And here's what makes this so powerful. When you stop reacting to the 3D, when you stop letting your circumstances dictate your state, you become truly free. You realize that nothing in your external world has any power over your internal world unless you give it that power. But this leads to the biggest objection people have. They say, "Okay, I get it. But if I ignore my bills and just pretend I'm rich, won't I end up homeless?" How do you balance living in the end with taking practical action? Does this mean you just sit around imagining money while doing nothing? Neville called it the bridge of incidents. This is how your assumption becomes physical reality. You don't sit and imagine and do nothing. You assume the state, you live in the end, and then you follow the impulses that naturally arise from that state. The key word is naturally. When you're truly living in the end, when you've successfully impressed your subconscious with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you will be moved to take action. But it won't feel like effort. It won't feel like hustle. It'll feel natural, even obvious. These are the incidents, the synchronicities, the opportunities that form a bridge between your current reality and your desired reality. And here's the crucial part. You don't plan the bridge. You don't figure out the how. You assume the end and let the bridge reveal itself. Psychologists call this the reticular activating system, or RAS. It's the part of your brain that filters information and decides what's important. When you're focused on lack, your RS shows you more lack. When you're operating from the assumption of wealth, your RS starts showing you opportunities, ideas, people, resources that were always there, but you couldn't see them before. Studies in cognitive psychology show that we literally cannot perceive information that doesn't align with our dominant beliefs and expectations. We're walking around in a filtered reality. Change the filter, and you change what you see. Here's how it happened for Amanda. She wanted to start her own business, but had no capital, no connections, no clear path forward. She tried affirmations for months. I am a successful business owner. Nothing. Then she switched to Neville's method. She stopped affirming and started assuming. Every night she would live in the feeling of running a thriving business. She would feel the satisfaction of serving clients, the joy of financial independence, the pride of building something meaningful. She didn't know how it would happen. She just stayed in the state. Within 2 weeks, she randomly met someone at a coffee shop who mentioned needing help with a project in her exact area of expertise. That conversation led to a consulting contract. That contract led to referrals. Those referrals led to more clients. Within 6 months, she had a full roster and quit her job. She didn't force it. She didn't chase it. She assumed it, and the bridge appeared naturally, step by step, incident by incident. And this is why trying to figure out the how actually blocks your manifestation. When you're obsessing over how it's going to happen, you're operating from doubt. You're in planning mode, which means you don't actually believe it's already done. But when you truly assume the end, you're relaxed about the means. You trust that the how will take care of itself. This isn't blind faith. It's understanding how consciousness actually works. But there's still one major trap that catches people even when they understand all of this. Even when they're doing SATs correctly, living in the end, ignoring the 3D. What is it? Neville said your inner conversations are the most powerful manifestation tool you have. Yet most people are completely unconscious of them. All day long, you're having conversations in your head. You're narrating your life, commenting on events, judging situations, talking to yourself. And here's what's insane. These inner conversations are creating your reality far more than any technique you practice for 10 minutes before bed. If you do SATs perfectly for 5 minutes, but then spend the other 23 hours and 55 minutes thinking and talking about lack, poverty, struggle, doubt, guess which one wins? The inner conversation always wins because it's your dominant state. Dr. Fred Luskin at Stanford University studied the impact of repetitive negative thoughts. He found that the average person has about 60,000 thoughts per day, and about 95% of those thoughts are the same as the day before. If those thoughts are about lack, worry, fear, complaint, you're literally reinforcing poverty consciousness 60,000 times a day. No amount of positive affirmations can override that. This is why Neville was obsessed with mental discipline. He said, you must police your inner conversations. You must catch yourself when you're mentally complaining about money, when you're having imaginary arguments about bills, when you're rehearsing conversations where you explain why you can't afford something. Every one of those inner conversations is an affirmation, and they're more powerful than any formal affirmation because they're charged with emotion and belief. Let me show you how this played out for Kevin. He was doing everything right technically. SATs every night. Living in the end during his practice. But his manifestations weren't coming. When we tracked his inner conversations for one day, we found the problem. He was spending most of his mental energy complaining. Why is this taking so long? Why does everyone else have money except me? This is never going to work for me. What if I'm doing it wrong? Those inner conversations were his real affirmations, and they were affirming delay, lack, doubt, failure. Once he became aware of this and started consciously redirecting his inner conversations to align with his desired state, everything changed. Instead of, "Why is this taking so long?" he would catch himself and think, "I love how perfectly everything is unfolding." Instead of, "I can't afford this," he would think, "I'm so grateful for my abundant resources." These weren't formal affirmations. They were just conscious adjustments to his natural inner dialogue. Within a month, he manifested a $15,000 freelance contract completely out of nowhere. And this is the real work. Anyone can do a visualization technique for 5 minutes. But can you maintain the state throughout the day? Can you catch yourself when your inner conversation drifts into lack? Can you redirect it without force, naturally, easily, as someone who already has what they desire? This is what Neville meant by living in the state. It's not something you do, it's something you are. But even when you've mastered your inner conversations, there's one final test that trips up almost everyone. What do you do when the 3D reality seems to get worse instead of better? Neville warned about this explicitly. He said there will be a testing period between assumption and fulfillment. During this time, your 3D reality might actually appear to get worse. Your debt might increase. Your income might drop. Unexpected expenses might appear. This is where most people abandon the technique and go back to affirmations or give up entirely. But Neville said this is actually proof that it's working. When you assume a new state, your old state fights back. Your subconscious is purging the old beliefs, the old patterns, the old identity. It's like when you start a new diet and your body craves junk food intensely for the first few days. It's not a sign that the diet isn't working. It's a sign that it is. Your system is adjusting. In psychology, this is called an extinction burst. When you're trying to eliminate an old behavior or belief, it often intensifies right before it disappears completely. Therapists see this all the time. A patient is making progress, and then suddenly all their symptoms come rushing back stronger than ever. The therapist who doesn't understand extinction bursts might think the treatment failed. But the experienced therapist knows this is actually the sign that breakthrough is imminent. The old pattern is dying and it's fighting for survival. Here's a powerful real-life example. Jennifer assumed the state of being debt-free. She did SATs. She lived in the end. She maintained her inner conversations. Everything seemed fine for 2 weeks. Then, suddenly, her car broke down. $1,500 repair. Then her landlord raised her rent. Then she got a medical bill she wasn't expecting. In 1 month, her debt increased by almost $4,000. Most people would have said, "See, this doesn't work. Manifestation is fake." But Jennifer had studied Neville deeply. She knew about the testing period. She knew this was the 3D reality showing her the last remnants of her old state. So instead of panicking, instead of going back to, "I am broke, and this is never going to change," she doubled down on her assumption. She maintained the state of being debt-free. She felt it even more intensely. She refused to let the temporary 3D circumstances shift her consciousness. And here's what happened. 3 weeks later, she got a call from the IRS. They had miscalculated her taxes from 3 years ago. She was owed a refund, $5,200, enough to cover the unexpected expenses and clear additional debt. If she had abandoned her assumption during the testing period, she would have missed the manifestation entirely. And this is the ultimate test of whether you truly understand Neville's teaching or whether you're still stuck in affirmation mode. Affirmations are about hoping and trying. Living in the end is about knowing and being. When you know something is done, temporary contrary evidence doesn't shake you. You might acknowledge it. You might handle it practically. But you don't let it change your inner state. This is what Neville meant when he said, persist in the assumption. Not hope it works. Not try to believe. Persist. Stay there. Remain faithful to the unseen reality until it becomes the seen reality. But now you might be thinking, okay, I get all of this, but how do I actually start? What's the step-by-step process to stop doing affirmations and start doing what Neville actually taught? Here's your exact roadmap to manifesting wealth the way Neville actually taught it, not the way the affirmation industry distorted it. First, stop all present tense affirmations immediately. I know that sounds harsh, but you need to break the pattern. Every time you catch yourself saying, I am rich, while you're not, you're reinforcing the contradiction. Cut it out completely. Second, identify the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Don't think about the money. Think about what the money gives you. Is it security, freedom, peace, options, pride, relief? Get specific about the emotional state, not the dollar amount. Third, create one simple scene that implies your wish is fulfilled. This isn't a long, complicated visualization. It's one short scene, maybe 10 seconds long, that you could only experience if your desire was already manifested. For wealth, this could be checking your bank balance and seeing a specific number that represents wealth to you. It could be making a large purchase without hesitation. It could be having a conversation where someone congratulates you on your success. Keep it simple and sensory-rich. Fourth, every night before sleep, enter that scene from a first-person perspective. Feel the feelings. Engage your senses. Make it real in your imagination. Do this for about 60 to 90 seconds, and then let yourself drift into sleep from that feeling. This is your Sate-See practice. Fifth, throughout the day, police your inner conversations. Every time you catch yourself thinking or saying something that contradicts your desired state, stop and redirect. You don't need to force positive thoughts. Just refuse to entertain the negative ones. Replace, I can't afford this with, I'm so grateful for my abundance. Replace, why doesn't this work for me, with, I love how perfectly everything unfolds. Small shifts, done consistently. Sixth, when contrary evidence appears in your 3D reality, acknowledge it without emotional reaction. Handle what needs to be handled practically, but don't let it define your state. Remember, it's old news. It's the result of your old consciousness. Stay faithful to your new assumption. Seventh, watch for the bridge of incidents. Impulses, ideas, opportunities, synchronicities. When they appear, and they will, act on them naturally. Don't force, don't chase, but don't ignore them either. This is how your assumption becomes manifest. This is the method. It's simple, but it's not easy. It requires mental discipline. It requires faith in the unseen. It requires persistence when your 3D reality is screaming the opposite. But it works, not because it's magic, because it's how consciousness actually operates. Neville proved it in his own life over and over. He manifested his trip to Barbados when he had no money. He manifested his discharge from the army when it was supposedly impossible. He manifested wealth, relationships, health, everything, using this exact method. And thousands of people since then have done the same. The question is, are you willing to stop doing what doesn't work and start doing what does? Are you willing to let go of affirmations and embrace the actual teaching? Now you have the exact method to manifest wealth the way Neville Goddard actually taught it. Not through empty affirmations that contradict your reality, but through assumption, through feeling, through living in the end, through persistence in the unseen state until it becomes seen. You understand why saying I am rich while you're broke is keeping you broke. You know that consciousness is the only reality, and that your job is to shift your state, not repeat words. You have the technique. You have the understanding. The only question left is, will you actually do it? Stop wasting time on affirmations that don't work. Start tonight. Create your scene. Enter it before sleep. Feel it as real. And then watch as your entire reality reshapes itself to match your assumption. This isn't theory. This is tested. This is proven. This is exactly what Neville taught and exactly what works. Subscribe to Attraction Magnet and hit that bell icon to keep learning the real teachings of manifestation, not the watered-down version. Comment below which part of this method you're going to implement tonight. Tell me your scene. Tell me your feeling. I read every single comment and I answer everyone. And hit that like button if this video completely changed how you think about manifestation. Because if you got this far, it did. The transformation starts now. Your new reality starts now. Stop saying, I am rich. Start being rich in consciousness. And watch as everything changes.